When I was in elementary and middle school, as I imagine was the case for a lot of people, my friends at the time and I made up these fictional story worlds that we'd act out during recess. In kindergarten and first grade, my friends Elizabeth and Katie and I were workers at a place called the Acorn Factory, where we manufactured and distributed acorns around the playground. And around like 3rd or 4th grade, the bodies of my friends Matea and Rakesh and me were secretly being remotely controlled by snakes deep in the woods near school. The three of us were so committed to this fantasy that I remember feeling seemingly real shame about keeping it secret that we were secretly snakes. Anyway, as we grew up, we found other ways to express this desire to create and commit to story worlds, which, now that I'm in college, manifests as Dungeons & Dragons, which is a return to form in some ways. But between committing to these worlds in elementary school and consciously codifying playing in them in college, in middle school, when I started getting some computer skills, I put this energy into making short YouTube movies. Most of these were fairly low-effort things I'd make in a day, and the few times I'd make one longer than 5 minutes, it'd feel like a much bigger commitment. My friends and eventually my cousins got into this with me, and eventually the movies started getting more and more elaborate. I'd write scripts, make time blocks for filming, and totally direct my friends around because, after all, I was the director. It was only in 2015 that I realized I'd become so invested in the products of these creative sprees that I had fallen out of touch with the goal of getting together with my cousins, which was not to create some masterpiece, but to have fun with each other. I wrote about this realization and how it taught me to think more clearly about goals and values in my college admissions essay for William & Mary, so this whole framework is something that's been on my mind for a while now. And it was very present to me last summer when I watched the first episode of the Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya called The Adventures of Mikuru Asahina Episode 00. The last bit of context here is that I've got not the greatest reading comprehension ability, and it usually takes me a while to really understand what I'm watching. So watching the episode, I was confused by the 3:4 aspect ratio, the VHS quality, the bad camera work and editing, the nonsensical story, the cheesy music, and the exhausted narration. I rewatched the episode with my dad the other day, and it seemed so obvious on my second go-round. But my first time watching this, it wasn't until The Adventures of Mikuru Asahina Episode 00 ended, and we cut out to the much more modern visual style of the world of the Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, the episode, all of a sudden, totally resonated with me. That shot of Haruhi turning back from the screen triumphantly with the word director written on her sleeve to face her exhausted friends, that was me. I knew the relationship these people had with each other, and I understood the tension that was there. Soon after, I learned 2 things about the story. First, the story was being told non-chronologically. The whole time I was watching, I was hoping that there was some secret meaning to the fact that these episodes were seemingly out of order, and I was disappointed when eventually I learned that there wasn't one. But I did find myself enjoying the nonlinearity of it. It felt like accessing memories, which totally lined up with the nostalgia I felt when I was connecting my life to the story as I watched. Second, the story had a fantastical layer beneath its otherwise slice-of-life genre. Briefly, it turns out that each of the characters besides our main character is some kind of time traveler or alien or psychic, and all of them are masquerading as high school students to prevent Haruhi, our amateur film director, from discovering that she has incredible powers and might actually be God. This was wish fulfillment fantasy for the younger version of me. Like Haruhi, I wished that there was some fantasy just around the corner from everyday middle school life, and for Haruhi there really is. It totally rocked the part of me that still resonates with that sensibility for fantasy I had in middle school, and it feels like a return to the commitment to fantasy I had earlier in elementary school. And I think that all of this was an intention of the creators of the show. Pretty explicitly, we can see these 2 aspects, the nonlinear and the fantastical, reflected in The Adventures of Mikuru Asahina Episode 00, in its own nonsensical storytelling and fantastical elements. And we can also see it more subtly in the wonderfully sleepy and contemplative Season 1 finale, Someday in the Rain. We've got this long moment where we're just sitting in the club room, reading alone with Yuki, while the other characters are having their own adventures in the snow not far outside the clubroom window. To me, this is an inversion of the infamous elevator scene from Evangelion. In that scene, we're trapped feeling this terrible tension between Asuka and Rei. But in this scene, we're just chilling with Yuki. It feels like an affirmation of this point in our lives, and that's what the show feels like to me.